We are looking together up until the summer at how we can be mature in our living for Jesus. One of my children was born down the toilet almost, Amos Durling, who's 13 this week. It explains a lot about him. We had a home birth. We had a home birth for Evie. I got the water just right. You have to get it to a certain temperature and then drop it by, I think, 2 degrees before the lady goes in to give birth. As I was going through this earlier, I thought, why do you have to drop it by 2 degrees? Why not just have it at that level the whole time? I think maybe the midwives are trying to keep me busy and focused on something rather than panicking around. With Joe, for Amos, I'd got the water perfectly. I dropped it the 2 degrees, and the midwife said, you might want to just go to the loo before you get in the water. And so Joe went to the loo, and I helped her out there because she was in pain, childbirth, I think it's called. And as she was there, I thought, there's the head. And so they grabbed Joe, and Amos just dropped out there and then in the toilet, which explains a lot. It's not the birth I'd planned. I was really cheesed off. I thought, I've got the birthing pool right again. I'm really good at this now. I've done it twice. I could set up a business, birthingpoolbybaptists.com.uk.co. And it's wasted, but we didn't waste it in the end because the other 3 kids came down and they got in it and used it as a swimming pool for the whole morning. So every cloud has a silver lining. We're going to watch the most famous birth story now from Luke chapter 2, verses 1 to 10, because it's Christmas. Mary gives birth to Jesus in a stable, probably a carved out cave where they kept the animals, and lays him in a manger. Manger sounds lovely, isn't it? But it's a feeding trough. Would you eat your food from a feeding trough at one of those farms that you can go around where you pet all the animals? No, of course we wouldn't. Would we lay our firstborn in there? Only if there was nowhere else soft enough to lay that baby. Did you see in the picture at the end there, there's a little cute baby lamb just poking its head through from Mary, looking at baby Jesus in the manger going, oh, isn't it lovely, with a few weird looking birds sat on the thing, just very quietly looking in with a little smile on their beak. Can beaks smile? I didn't know that they could. I imagine Mary was saying, you keep those sheep away. They keep sniffing around. This isn't their place to be at the moment. Maybe she didn't say it with the gritted teeth that I've got, but let's not put Mary too high on a pedestal. She was a normal woman, a teenage girl to be fair, and she's giving birth in the roughest of places because nobody will have her and Joseph to stay with them. And the first to visit them are the shepherds. Shepherds were looked down upon in Jesus' day and age. They were dodgy people. They didn't observe the religious things that they should have observed because they were out in the fields looking after their sheep. That's why when Jesus in John's Gospel calls himself a shepherd, he doesn't. He says, I am a good shepherd, because he wanted to clarify, I'm not like the normal shepherds you know. I'm a good shepherd. It would be like saying I'm a good Spurs fan. You would have to clarify it very, very clearly. If I was Mary, I would be far more cheesed off than that my birthing pool wasn't used. I've been told by the Archangel Gabriel that I am going to give birth to the Son of the living God, and it's happening here, now, with these people as the first visitors. But chapter 2 verse 19 we read, but Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. You could say that Mary transformed negative tension, that she took a bad situation, not a great situation, and didn't let it become bad for her. How did she transform that negative tension? By pondering what was happening. Ponder here in Greek means to hold, to carry, to transform something. And so she transforms that tension by holding it and carrying it rather than giving that negative tension back. Can you imagine if the shepherds had come in all that way, risking leaving their sheep, and she'd said, oh, clear off. I've had it up to here today. Nothing's gone my way. This is my firstborn, and it's ruined. No, she ponders what's happening and welcomes them in. Ronald Rollheiser says, any pain or tension we do not transform, we will retransmit. Any bad that is done to us, if we don't transform it, we're more than likely to give it back. Did Mary's pondering and transformation actually allow the shepherds to come and worship Jesus? For me, if I don't ponder and transform, could I be keeping people away from Jesus with my jealousy and bitterness, anger and unforgiveness? This week the real battle begins. The lines will be drawn because the slugs are out in their thousands. I began to plant out my veg this week, and they are even hiding under the plastic of the pot in the crevices so that they can come out at night. Now is the time when the battle begins, and we put out one brick with one at an angle on top of it so that in the day you can take off the angled one and the slugs will be there and you can kill them. This is when the salt goes down. This is when the children's hair that my wife has cut is laid out. It really freaks me out seeing my kids' hair on the veggie patch. It looks like something out of a horror novel. This is when the coffee granules are taken from Waitrose by their bucket loads and spread around the vegetables to keep them out. This is when we put down stuff to just keep the slugs away. This is when we go out at 11:30 on a date night and pick out slugs with our torches and put them in a tub, which I forgot to put the lid on properly. So in the morning, the 40 slugs that we'd put in the tub actually got out and were all over the vegetable patch again. It was my fault. This is when the battle begins to get rid of the slugs. But as Christians, we're called to more than getting rid of the slugs in our life and our culture. We're called to transform them. In the Second World War, the British wanted to destroy Germany. And it was Bishop Bell from Chichester who said, no, there are good German people. There are Christians who want Hitler to be undone. We must stand with them rather than destroy them. We must help them transform their country rather than punishing them once again. And was Bishop Bell listened to? No, he was not. And so we see the far right rising again all across Europe now, don't we? As they did just 80 years ago. And are we nervous? We should be. And we should turn to prayer and we should ponder and we say, God, help us transform rather than destroy, because these people and situations are not slugs. It does not do us good to build a bigger wall than the wall that they built, to have more arms than the arms that they've got, to have more invective than they have, and build and build and build so that we actually get nowhere. We are called to something higher as mature Christians. We are called to transformation, not to giving things back. We're called to meet jealousy with affirmation. We're called to meet bitterness with graciousness, anger with forgiveness, hatred with love. Don't know about you as you see those words on the screen. I've got it all together there, haven't you? I've nailed all of those. I'm never jealous anymore. Never get angry, apart from with slugs. Never bitter. I don't hate anyone. Maybe I've got a way to go. Maybe you have as well. We're not called to be slug killers. I think we're called to be water purifiers. To take the water in with all its dirt and grime and to hold the toxins of jealousy and anger and bitterness and hatred and transform them so that we only give pure water back to others around us. Don't you find those kind of people delightful? They're the kind of people I love hanging around, where there's no angle, there's no snide comment, there's no waiting to trip you up, but there is love and forgiveness and inclusion. I love being around those people. The natural temptation is to give back in kind. Don't get mad, get even, I think the phrase is. Give it back to them. I was talking to one of my children this week, and they were talking about someone difficult that they were having to work with. And I said, there's a book on Christian leadership. I can't remember what it's called, but I remember the title of one of the chapters. And the title was this: When Dealing with Dragons, Don't Become a Dragon. And it's always stuck with me. It's so easy when somebody is bitter and jealous towards me, towards you, to become like them. And in the end, we end up in this argument that we don't even know what it's about anymore. Someone in another book said the body keeps the score. When we let that stuff come into us and when we hold on to it and we don't transform it, it actually affects us physically. Have you noticed that? That when you're feeling bitter or jealous in your head or in your heart, you struggle to sleep, you get achy. Have you ever found that? That you get up and you're like, oh, what's happened to my leg? That's because you're not forgiving. Huh? But it works because we're a whole human being. Mary pondered and transformed. How do we ponder like Mary so that we don't give back in kind? I encourage us to look at the situation from the other person's point of view. Why are they behaving in this way? Listen, pray, say, God, help me with this situation, with this person. What is going on here? I think that, not legalistically, but half of prayer should be silent reflection. Should be listening to God. Not always. Sometimes we have times when we're like, to God and speaking all the time. But do we listen as well as speak to God? For God to guide us. Lament, tell God how you feel. God, I'm really cheesed off with this person. They have hurt me deeply and I'm angry about it. A third of the Psalms are laments. A third of them are letting God have it and telling God how we really feel. If King David and all the psalmists could do that, then we can as well. Please don't make your prayers polite. It's not Christmas Day with Grandma when we come to pray with God. It's real life. So let it out, because God can cope. And love. Say, God, help me to change. Help me to be transformative in this situation. Love doesn't mean kind of wet drip Hollywood love, you know, everything goes. There are times when we say, actually, you're taking the mickey out of me and I'm going to draw a line here. But we still love even within that. And then leave it with God. Say, God, I'm trusting you with this situation, with this person. And live differently, not giving back in kind, but transforming those bad things. I was reading a biography about Eugene Peterson again this week. When he was a young minister just starting out in America, he used to eat every Friday with the caretaker of his church, Willie Osser, and his wife, Mary. Willie Osser hated the church because his pastor in Germany had become a fervent supporter of the Nazis in the Second World War. And so he couldn't line up church and war and God and Germany and all of those things. And so he turned his back on it. And they would have lively conversations every other Friday as they ate together. And after a while, Willie said to Eugene, look, I paint. Can I paint your portrait? And he said, yeah. So he would stay for a few hours after they'd eaten, and Willie would paint Eugene's portrait. One after, and he would never let him see it. He always wanted to see it. And he said, no, you'll see it when it's finished. And one afternoon, Mary came in, the wife, with cups of tea, and she cried out, crank, crank, which means, in German, I hope, sick, sick. And she was pointing at the portrait. And Willie responded to his wife and said, he's not sick now, but that's the way he will look when the compassion is gone, when the mercy gets squeezed out of him. Because Willie said doing this job will kill him. And that's what he's going to look like, bitter and sick and emaciated. Eugene Peterson, with that broad smile and that lovely spirit, kept that painting in his office as a reminder of the spiritual danger that his calling placed upon him. And I would suggest that we could all have that portrait painted of us as a reminder of what we don't want to become. Towards the end of Eugene Peterson's life, he was writing letters about the deep divisions in the church in America. And he wrote in one of those letters, "I have no patience with schism," that's division, rupture, break, "this dividing the church because we don't like or approve of some of our friends or neighbours. The more pure the church becomes, the more defiant it becomes to entering into the prayer of Jesus for us that we will all be one. Are these friends the enemy? Fine. What is Jesus' command regarding the enemy? Love them, right? I can live with and respect men and women who I don't agree with. I have for 53 years now as a minister. This is nothing new. But this invective and meanness is new, and I want no part of it. I don't think as pastors we are called to be God's policemen. Amen to that. The schismatics cancel out any truth that they are contending for by the hate they vomit in the sanctuary." Don't want the divide. Don't want ministers at the front spouting division. Who's in, who's out? Can we love our enemy? Those who pour bitterness and jealousy and rage and anger into us. That is the litmus test for mature Christian living. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote to his friends after he discovered, "I'm not going to be in Tegel prison for just a few months. I'm going to be here for years, maybe to the end of my life." And he wrote to his good friend Eberhard Bethge in June 1944, just a few months before he was murdered. And he was interpreting 1 Peter 3 verse 9, which says, "Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing." And he wrote to his friend, "God does not repay evil for evil, and thus the righteous should not do so either. No judgment, no abuse, but blessing. The world would have no hope if this were not the case. The world lives by the blessing of God and of the righteous, and thus has a future. Blessing means laying one's hand on something and saying, despite everything, you belong to God." The prison guards who beat him, who tortured other prisoners who he heard weeping at night because they'd been moved to the top level of the prison and knew that they would be murdered within a few days or weeks. You belong to God. This is what we do with the world that inflicts such suffering on us. We do not abandon it. We do not repudiate, despise or condemn it. Instead, we call it back to God. We give it hope. We lay our hand on it and say, may God's blessing come upon you. May God renew you. Be blessed, world created by God. You who belong to your Creator and Redeemer. We have received God's blessing in happiness and in suffering. Yet those who have been blessed can do nothing but pass on this blessing. Indeed, they must be a blessing wherever they are. Bonhoeffer became the pastor of that prison. Over the years, prison officers came up to him and said, "We're really not sure about what Hitler is doing. We feel deeply uncomfortable with what we're being asked to do. Can we sneak your message out, risking our own lives so that people will hear this message of God that you've given us?" When Noah was home from university from Manchester, he moaned. He said, "I can't get to sleep, keep waking up." And we said, "Why?" He said, "Because of the bird song in the back garden. Every morning I'm woken by these birds singing." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to disappoint you, son, that we don't have the police sirens shouting and fighting and drug dealing of Moss Side in Manchester that you're used to. Sorry to let you down with bird song." He's now back up there and I'm sure he's sleeping soundly. What will we listen to? The sirens and anger and drug dealing and fights, and allow them to internalise in us so that we become like them? Or will we listen to the bird song of the Holy Spirit, who is likened to a dove of peace, who wants to dwell richly within us as we ponder, hold, carry, transform, so that we don't give back in like, but give good gifts to people. You belong to God.